The man, the myth, the mullet himself, Mike Gundy, has been the face of Cowboy football for the better part of 2 decades. In this new evolutionary process, could it allow him to take a little bit of a different role that also could allow him to become the face of Cowboy recruiting?
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at AllDayOState. Today, we're brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment matter more, especially with Super Bowl 59 right around the turn here. FanDuel Sportsbook is going to let new customers bet $5, and if you win, you'll score 200 bones back in bonus bets. All you have to do is download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started today. Meanwhile, we get started in the conversation of Mike Gundy, the man, the myth, the mullet that has been the figurehead of Cowboy football for the better part of 2 decades. If you go back to even when he was a player with Barry and Thurman and Hartley, this has been Mike Gundy's playground in Stillwater, America, which is why he is the king of Stillwater, Oklahoma. It is what it is. Mike Gundy has more than earned that respect throughout the course of his career. But the one limitation has seemingly always been recruiting. Now, some say it's because Oklahoma State's not a destination place, and some say it's because of the budget. There's a lot of factors that people kind of roll into this. But one of the factors that isn't brought up enough is the fact that Mike Gundy does pride himself on being able to do things without the entirety of the budget. Therefore, if the budget was X amount, he took pride in coming back and saying, I got all of this recruiting class without spending half of that, basically. Now it's going to be his opportunity to no longer short sell himself or his university on potential guys they could get in recruiting. I also firmly believe that if he's allowed to kind of take more of a CEO role, which I feel like it's kind of leading there, because we know Todd Grantham is the head coach of the defense. That is something that Mike Gundy has stated multiple times now. And when you look at Doug Meacham, of course, he circles back around to a numerous amount of things. But one of the benefits is both of these guys are going to come with a little bit of a different area of recruiting expertise. They're going to come with different connections that have different capabilities and calling guys from former places. And the high school connections is something that Mike Gundy definitely has a lot of, but you could get more out of that. Instead of focusing on the X's and O's, maybe perhaps now he can take this expanded role, more shaking hands, kissing babies, and going on the recruiting trail. And this was sparked because I saw on social media people asking, is it just because we're tweeting out a lot of these things, or is Mike Gundy physically out recruiting more than we've ever seen possible? I think two things can be true at the same time. We are, I'd say, media driven right now on social media to kind of push some more Oklahoma State, which I think is absolutely massive. But more so than that, I do believe that Mike Gundy is out personally doing more physical recruiting than potentially ever before. And I think that could be something that is freed up by this role if Todd Grantham is the head coach of the defense and if Doug Meacham is the head coach of the offense, which we all know there's going to be a little bit more reluctancy in that department. But it should free up Mike Gundy to do more Pat McAfee, ESPN-style things and get more heavily involved in the recruiting trail. Benny Tonga has been the saving grace for Cowboy football. And obviously, Todd Bradford is pretty good at identifying some of the talent that we need to go after. But we need to have more than just those individuals that can expand our horizons. When you have guys like J.W. Walsh that can help you get in that Denton Geyer area, with his dad being a legendary coach in that area, that could easily help Mike Gundy continue to build blocks in the recruiting realm. Nobody can argue the fact that Oklahoma State does need to get better in recruiting. Hovering in the 40s, 50s, 60s, year after year, it's good enough to keep us where we're at, but it's not good enough to get us to the promised land of multiple Big 12 titles and multiple CFP appearances. This is an opportunity for Mike Gundy. Take all of the years of experience that Todd Grantham has and Ryan Osborne and Cap Deedy and Doug Meacham, and we're going to talk a little bit later about Theron H. These guys have been all over the country, whether it be Big Ten schools, SEC schools, NFL programs, other Big 12 programs. So they have a long Rolodex of people that they can sift through to determine who they're going to target in recruiting and who they should focus on. We're seeing Mike Gundy out here at Booker T. Washington, and whether he's going to BTW or if he's going to Jinx to see Batman, KD Jones, or if he's going up to Owasso to see Taj Overton or that big beast of an offensive lineman they got. He doesn't need to go far to get Stillwater's own Nehemiah Cologne, and I will tell you, I'll be breaking stuff if Nehemiah Cologne does not end up as an Oklahoma State Cowboy. But it's not going to be easy. All of this circling around the potential for the Taj Overtons and the Mason James and the Colton Yarboroughs. This can be expanded upon, I think, with the help of guys like Todd Grantham and Doug Meacham, just because of the connections that they have, the previous stops that they've been on. And now a lot of the coaches that they've coached with are now at other places, some being head coaches at other places as well. So we should now use this time to help Mike Gundy kind of get more reach in the recruiting department. Take the helicopter, go more places, recruit more dudes, get more one-on-one. Instead of it being the coordinators or the position coaches, of course, that is imperative because those are the guys that are going to maintain the relationships during the season. But this is a crucial moment, in my opinion, for Mike Gundy to catapult himself into another trajectory. And that trajectory is, again, titles, trophies, something that we have lacked a little bit of. And part of that is getting the right ingredients with the recruiting classes. I firmly believe in the last couple of classes are going to be very successful. But at the same time, you have to continue to fill the coffers. I think you could look no further at quarterback. The fact that we have 4 quality quarterbacks doesn't mean we're going to keep all 4 of them when spring is over. So we're going to be not only recruiting high school guys, but there's still going to be a little bit of a transfer portal window, even though it's not really a window anymore. But the transfer market is something that the existing coaches can probably dial in on. Meanwhile, this could be a great opportunity for Mike Gundy to do more physical in-home recruiting. Not to say he doesn't. We do know that he does. But in my personal opinion, this should be his focus. Just manning, being the captain of the ship and making sure that everybody's doing their jobs. But you have to be able to get guys on the ship. You have to get more than what we've been getting. And I think this frees him up to do just that. If he is taking this bigger, more expanded CEO style of role, the approach should be hammer away at recruiting. Get Oklahoma State to a level that we haven't been to, or at least where we should be. If we're always a perennial top 25 program, aside from last season, then we should always be hovering in the same realm when it comes to recruiting. I'm not saying we should be top 10, top 15, even top 20, but top 25, top 30, that should be the barometer that we measure all success in recruiting upon. We have built up enough cachet over the years to be able to get those classes, but we're going to have to do something that we haven't done in the past, which is to be a little bit more flexible, a little bit more malleable in the guys that we go after. The checklist of everything that Mike Gundy's looking for. Maybe with the help of Todd Grantham and Doug Meacham, he could expand upon that, or he can kind of trim that down a little bit to get to just the meat and taters. What are the kids that we think that can come in and provide instantaneous abilities? We don't have the ability anymore to build guys up for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years before we finally get to see them blossom. Those days are numbered, if not gone. So you have to be able to replace your roster with guys that could potentially affect the field somewhat immediately. Mike Gundy, I think, has the means to do that. And I think he's going to have some of the freedoms if he allows his DC and OC to do their thing. It's going to give him more time. And that time doesn't need to be diving deep into film unless it's high school film or some of the transfer portal stuff. Mike Gundy can become the king of Stillwater and the king of recruiting if he so chooses to do so. Just like you can become the king of your bank account with the help of Super Bowl 59. FanDuel is the bee's knees for all of your betting needs, and with Super Bowl 59 right around the corner, the time is now. It is one game, 2 teams with endless possibilities. There's not a better way for you to make your mark every single day than with FanDuel. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is going to help you whether it's predicting the next touchdown, calling the MVP, who's going to win the coin toss, whatever it is, FanDuel makes it easy for you to get in on the action. With live betting games all day long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the very final whistle. Live betting is the feature that lets you stay involved no matter what is happening on the field. The app is super easy to navigate. Knowing all of the possibilities, you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 back in bonus bets for the Super Bowl. That's the icing on any cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started today. Bet just $5. And if you win, you'll get $200 back in bonus bets. That is with FanDuel.com. Make sure you go to FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel. It is the official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 59 and the NFL. All right, so now we roll right in here to one of those individuals that can potentially help Mike Gundy expand in some of the recruiting department, and that is going to be Doug Meacham. It is no surprise whenever you look at the list of guys that Doug Meacham has brought into his prospective universities. We've already discussed about the Des Bryants and the David Gliddens and the Josh Coopers and the Schubert Iniums. All of that was kind of facilitated by Doug Meacham. But even more so than that, he touched on it in his most recent interview. This is home. This is where he played. He got to block for two of the most legendary running backs in not only Oklahoma State history, but collegiate football history. He got to play with Mike Gundy. And then he went into coaching, and he got to learn quite a bit from Pat Jones. And then along his coaching journey, which included stops at like Arizona and Washington, he got to learn under some of the greatest minds. And Steve Spurrier, he got to work at Houston under Dana Dibble, but Dana Holgorsen was a part of that. Of course, he was able to work with Dana at Oklahoma State. He was able to work with Todd Monken at Oklahoma State. He was here for some of the biggest seasons of all time, the 2011 Big 12 championship season with Brandon Weeden and Justin Blackman. And one of the things in the interview he mentioned, because, of course, everybody wants to talk about quarterback. Everybody wants to know where Haas Haney is going to fit into the equation. And I will admit that it was kind of refreshing for Doug Meacham to say that we don't really know exactly where Haas Haney is going to be. We know how talented he is. We know that he played some because he's too good to keep off the field, but he didn't get a lot of snaps, per se, at TCU. So everybody knows he runs a 10.63, 100-meter dash. But other than that, we don't know if he's going to be able to lead a program. And he talked about, kind of the blank slate style of approach that I think he's taking to this entire ordeal. But if anybody has any trepidation on whether Doug Meacham can do it, again, the more research, the more film, the more recruiting, it's starting to grow on me a little bit more. So I wanted to give that to you guys. He is home. And he also addressed the fact that he had other opportunities to go to the NFL, to have other, colleges that wanted his services. But for him, this was kind of like a dream come true. He didn't know if he would ever have the opportunity to come back to Oklahoma State before retiring because he is getting up there in age. He's not getting any younger. So this is his opportunity to circle the wagons back around and relive some of the glory days that he was here for while at Oklahoma State, while we were winning Big 12 titles, while we were having 10-win, 11-win, 12-win seasons. He expects to be able to bring all that back. And there is some Oklahoma State fans that are a little nervous about whether Doug Meacham is going to be the right hire. And for that, I wanted to take a peek back to whenever he got the OC job originally at TCU. Before he took over in 2014, in 2013, Trayvon Boykin had 1,198 yards. The very next season, under Doug Meacham, he threw for 3,901. He threw for 7 touchdowns in 2013. Under Doug Meacham, he threw for 33. And then you could even continue to go. Josh Dotson, one of the best receivers in TCU history, the year prior, 440 yards. His first year with Doug Meacham, over 1,000 yards. He was on the 2014 Broyles Award finalist list up against some of the biggest names that we consider now to be the heavy hitters in the coaching industry, like Lane Kiffin. He was one of the coordinators that he was going up against at that same time frame. Scott Frost, he was doing massive things offensively then as well, and he was competing with Doug Meacham. So on top of Josh Dotson, on top of what he was able to do with Trayvon Boykin, not to mention the fact that Trayvon Boykin went from rushing for like 300 yards to 707 yards the very next season. The running back, Aaron Green, he went from a few hundred yards to 922 yards. He was also averaging well under 5 yards a carry, and he catapults that to 7.1 yards per carry. This offense should look significantly different under Doug Meacham. We've seen it happen before. We've seen him do it before. Even Colby Listenby. One year he has 20 yards receiving. The next year he has almost 500 yards receiving. Doug Meacham has proven to do this, especially being a first-year brand new coach, as he was with TCU. And the evolved nature in which some of the biggest names at TCU at the time were able to uptick was all because of Doug Meacham. So yes, he's coming home. And it's an opportunity for him that he didn't really know that was going to be applicable again. He almost kind of felt like his heyday was already past him at Oklahoma State. This is another massive opportunity for him. And if there's ever going to be, the quintessential right blend, I think this is it. Because Todd Grantham has no connection to Oklahoma State. None. He's here to just prove a point and catapult the next phase of his career, whether that's going to be a coordinator or not, right? Somebody mentioned in the comments yesterday, not everybody wants to be a head coach. Some people just prefer to stay coordinators, and that very well may be. But keeping the Todd Grantham staff together over the next couple of years, it's not going to be easy, especially if we have success. Doug Meacham is a little bit of a different story, bringing guys over like Andrew Lewis and Cooper Bassett, former Cowboys, that it means a lot, that also played under Meacham, and one of which was recruited by Meacham. That is going to add a different layer. As I've said in the past, I'm a big fan of bringing back former Cowboys, but sometimes you have to expand. Defensively, we brought back 0 Cowboys, none, nada. So that's going to be an experiment all in and of itself. But offensively, we do have that with Doug Meacham and bringing back guys like Cooper Bassett, plus the recruiting. Guys, some of the biggest names at TCU were recruited by Doug Meacham. Some of the biggest names ever at Oklahoma State were recruited by Doug Meacham. And he's got to work with other guys like Rich Rodriguez and Kevin Sumlin. So I do think that he's going to be able to mold all of the things that he's learned, and he's also failed at times as well. Some of his years at TCU were some of their best offensively of all time, but he had a couple down years as well. He went through a couple demotions as well. You learn more about yourself in the downtrodden times than you do when you're riding high, when you're competing for titles. And if it weren't for the Big 12, there's no telling what 2014 TCU could have looked like, could have played for a national title. But we didn't know who our real champion was, so it really screwed the pooch. Given the co-champions thing, it really hurt. And if that doesn't happen, where does Doug Meacham's career take off after that, right? Of course, you could play the what-if game all day, every day. It's insignificant. What is significant is the amount of coaching, his ties to Oklahoma State, him being a Cowboy, some of the legendary offensive minds that he's been able to work under or with, not to mention the recruiting, right? That's the biggest reason I think that TCU always found a place for him, was because his recruiting acumen was second to none. So even if he got demoted from offense coordinator to a wide receivers coach, they were still going to make sure that he was the dude out on the recruiting trail making some of the biggest names happen. And he did that, which is, again, another reason, on top of Mike Gundy having a little bit of a different role, he could be doing more recruiting, but he could also be doing it off of the wings of Doug Meacham and Todd Grantham, because these do carry a lot of weight. These names are big names in the industry. So high school coaches are also going to be pretty enamored with some of the names that we have now manning positions at Oklahoma State. It's going to be a big time. Just like the fact that we have another dude to help out Doug Meacham for a place that it can still be viewed as wide receiver U. This is always a good time for people in the comments section that aren't Oklahoma State fans to say, look at this crazy guy calling Oklahoma State wide receiver U. Well, if the shoe fits, wear it. If it quacks like a duck and it walks like a duck, and it's probably a duck. And if you look at some of the greatest wide receivers in the history of collegiate football, several of them have come to Oklahoma State. So, of course, you're going to have your Ohio State conversations about wide receiver U. You're going to have your Alabama conversations about wide receiver U. But Oklahoma State has a bit in that conversation as well. And on top of Doug Meacham being able to get guys like JPR to kind of switch sides up, we like what we have in the transfer portal. We talked about, or Doug Meacham discussed how there's a difference between a pocket quarterback and a mobile quarterback. And if you have a pocket quarterback like Brandon Weeden was, you have to have a Justin Blackman, Blitnikoff kind of guy to help out in certain scenarios, as opposed to a mobile quarterback that can take off and numerically put the defense at a disadvantage. But we have the dudes, I think. Even with DeJon Stribling no longer being a Cowboy, if Talon Shetron can stay healthy, endless possibilities. I think Io Shotomite King could be a Leon Johnson clone with a lot more weight and a little bit higher vertical. And then you bring over somebody like a Shamar Rigby. You bring in Lloyd, who's a certified speedster from Nebraska. You already have Gavin Freeman. You already have DeJuan Lofton. So who's going to be helping Doug Meacham ensure that wide receiver U continues to have at least a semblance of a claim in Stillwater, Oklahoma? Because Theron H has some big shoes to fill. We can say whatever we want about what Casey Dunn was as an offensive coordinator, but nobody can argue what he was able to do as a wide receivers coach. So the big shoes are being left by Casey Dunn for Theron H to take over. But Theron H has been at a multitude of places. Marshall, UTEP, Arizona, Washington, Houston, Central Missouri. The list goes on. And Theron H is somebody who brings in a wealth of experience into Oklahoma State. Nearly 3 decades of coaching experience with several stops along the way that has allowed him to establish a very good name in the intricate details that are necessary for the advancement of the outside wide receiver position. The Z spot at Oklahoma State has always been a very big name, whether it's a Des Bryant or a Justin Blackman or a Tylan Wallace or a Tay Martin and even DeJon Stribling. And that's not going to change anytime soon. But you have to have a heavy hitter on the other side of the ball as well, because you're going to have 2 wide receivers on the X side more often than not. So you're going to have to find ways, creative ways, to get leverage and to get mismatches to counterbalance whatever the defense is giving you. And for anybody out there that was curious on, can we get somebody in here that can help expand on what Casey Dunn was already doing, I think that is encapsulated by Doug Meacham, but also the fact that Doug Meacham wanted to bring in Theron H. Doug knows that the wide receiver coach in Stillwater, America has to be a home run. Like, that's one of the positions that you cannot afford to take a break on. So I don't know about you, but I'm extremely excited to see what Theron H is able to do at Oklahoma State, because I think he's got the horses. We know he has the knowledge. If it's applicable immediately, it doesn't matter who's at quarterback. And one benefit that I will admit when it comes to the quarterback scenario is none of them are quote-unquote pocket passers. Mailuake Smith is pretty close, but Garrett Rangel has improved his athleticism, his speed, size, strength considerably. Zane Flores walked in with that capability already. And the speedster himself, Haas Haney, he can sling it. There's been clips of him already working with some Cowboy wide receivers pretty early on. So there's endless possibilities at the quarterback room. And the fact that Doug Meacham has a little bit of everything to work with back there should be something that gives him the warm and fuzzy feeling when he goes to sleep. Speaking of warm and fuzzies, the Cowgirls have an opportunity to continue to give us the warm and fuzzies tonight, and the Cowboys do as well. Now, the Cowboys haven't been providing a lot of warm and fuzzy feeling, but the Cowgirls have. And this battle for a Big 12 championship is a legit possibility with J.C. Hoyt at the helm. But the real question is, who's going to be the leading scorer? Because we've had so many up and down the line. And now that we're being ranked again, is Arizona State going to present a problem? A bottom tier at Big 12 school, but they're still going to be a little bit of an issue. They're not going to roll over for us. And these are the games that we have to take advantage of because we haven't been able to do so at certain times. You only have 3 losses, right? So we have to take that in consideration. But those losses are typically coming after a win. So this is a good moment for J.C. Hoyt. Just like the Cowboys basketball program has the opportunity to get a sweep. It might be the only opportunity all year to get a sweep because we did beat K-State earlier on in the season. But this time it's going to be on the road. We got to go to the Bramlage Coliseum in Manhattan in Kansas to take on the Purple Power Kitties. They were the Lavender Power Kitties in Stillwater, America. I don't care if they roll out that uniform combination again. There's not very many W's available for Cowboy basketball. This is one of them. K-State fans are kind of reeling with the amount they spent on NIL. This is not the return on investment they were looking for. We know what that feels like. So we need to try to hammer that one home. So hopefully both get a W. I think the Cowgirls get it done. I do have some reservations about the Cowboys getting a W on the road. But if there is an opportunity at a sweep, this is it. This is our sweep. So K-State, sorry you happen to be in the way, but there's still something to salvage here for Cowboy basketball. It's not completely lost. The season's not completely over. There's still some things that we could do to enhance ourselves in recruiting to give us an opportunity to climb that ladder in the next couple seasons. But anywho, that's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, you know I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere, so happy you choose to be here. Do me a favor. Hit the like button, share, comment, subscribe, all of that fun stuff. My podcast people out there, you're the bricks, the bread, the butter, the fountain, the fondue, you're all of it. Do what you do. Hit the stars. Leave a review. That is all. Later, taters.